2, 1, go.
Hello, hello. This is Corey Thompson from Dice Tower Now and Dice Tower Dish.
And this is the Podfather of gaming, very unshaven, Stephen Bonacore. You
I
are listening to Board Games Insider, episode 278, and we're recording it on April 12th, 2023. Board Games Insider is a proud member of the Dice Tower Network. And hey, do you think that if I ask nicely, Tom Vassell will vote to nominate us for the best podcast in the 17th annual Golden Geek Awards, which is now running on Board Game Geek? What do you think?
not with an unshaven face like that. I mean, I trimmed myself up really nice here. This
You
is
you got the ugliest beard on the planet. I'm just gonna
yes.
throw that out there. I mean,
No,
because
it's fine. It's fine. And
anyway,
I'm a Crocs guy now. I wear rainbow Crocs just
I
to add to this image. This
that's
is
really horrific. But I want to get back for a moment to, hey guys, the nominations for best game of the year, best two players, all of that stuff on Board Game Geek, the 17th annual Golden Geek Awards is now up on Board Game Geek. If you wouldn't mind voting for us to be nominated for Best Podcast, you go to the main page. The link is right under announcements, right at the top, or you go to boardgamegeek.com/geek awards/board game. And then you can vote for us for Best Podcast, anybody else as well. And of course, vote for your favorite games of the last year. So I hope you can do that. Nominations close only 4 days after you're going to hear this. So please go vote, get us nominated, or Ignacy will cry again. He's been crying about this for years.
Wouldn't it be great if the nomination happened right after I joined the podcast? Almost like
Yeah,
I've given this great new power to the
right.
podcast.
Well, and if you think about it, we have done a lot. I hope we've done a lot for the listeners, especially over the last year. We've added you as a third chair and rotating in and out. We have added play testing over the last year or so. We haven't been engaging the audience more. So, hey, we'd love to be nominated. And then, of course, we'd love to win. I'll annoy you about that later. But let's get nominated first. Corey,
Absolutely.
what's happening on the West Coast?
It has been just an absolute whirlwind on the West Coast. I have made several trips down to LA for that new film studio that I'm starting with Travis Oates. We are in planning and doing filming for new board game associated videos. So watch for a YouTube channel full of goodies coming probably around Gen Con time. But the big one is Corey Thompson, was personally invited to the hot party that Stephen was not at. I went to a board game day at John D. Clare's house, the designer of Space Base and Cubidos, Dead Reckoning. Such an amazing guy, such a fantastic host.
Yeah.
I saw so many people, and I apologize in advance if I forget names, but there was Candace from Board Game Geek. Sean Parker has a fantastic YouTube page. Tate Wu, the designer. Gary Dworetsky, who is doing the board game version of Slay the Spire, influencers Amanda Panda and Bonzinator, Peter from Jelly Bean Games, James Hudson from Druid City. I just saw so many people from the LA area. Even got to play Candace's new prototype game, Stage Left, a worker placement game about creating and running a rock band, hiring new band members and writing songs and doing gigs. It's even got a bag of drama chips, and if you get too much drama, your band will start to break up.
I love
So I
it.
really respect someone in the industry who actually decides to do some hard work and design a game. Do you know anyone like that, Stephen? Because I am just blown away by how good Candace's game is and how far along it is and how much I can talk about Candace's game without having an NDA in the way.
Oh, can I get Ignacy back in this podcast instead of you for a little while?
Oh,
I
you wish.
we'll talk a little bit about where my game design is in a
Oh, you're
little bit,
making
but
a game?
I might be designing a game. Thank you so much. I think that was a plug of some type. I have no idea. I have no idea
I
what that
am
was.
always on your side, Stephen.
Well, thank you so much, Corey. I appreciate it. Well, over here at the Podfather of Gaming, I mentioned last week that I started a web store. No money being made on this whatsoever.
Wait a minute, wait a minute, wait a minute. Did you really start a web store? Or
I
did you
did.
take over my web store?
You talk too much on this podcast. I'm
I
definitely gonna
do.
like. Could I silence your mic? I think I can do that. I'm the host.
You're in control of the editor too.
Probably I am. Anyway, I started a web store. It's a two-part thing. You can get embroidered stuff like you see me wearing here, and you see me at conventions wearing these embroidered with the embroidered logo on it. And that I use the same people that have done all of the stuff that I've done over at Stronghold. All that's really nice, beautiful. It's Queensboro, but this storefront just shows Podfather of Gaming stuff. It's great. But Marion, our good friend Marion, has created a Etsy store with the same stuff. And it has Podfather of Gaming mugs and glassware and shirts with funny slogans and stuff like that on there. And what Corey is also saying is that you can get Corey merchandise as well, because Marion, as a joke, sort of made up a whole Corey store as well. So you can be part of the Corey chorus. And if you really want to piss me off, you can buy a Corey shirt and not buy a Podfather of Gaming shirt. That would be amazing.
I believe I was the beta test on
You
how to run a store.
But again, I want to point that nobody's making any money on this. This is just so you can have it there, show support for the show, and the love for both Corey and myself and Ignacy by buying some of this
I don't even have
merch.
any items to show off.
Well, I didn't tell you that I was going to be bringing a show and tell here for the people that actually watch the show on the YouTube channel, The Podfather of Gaming. But just so you know, it's up there now. You can go check out some stuff. Maybe I'll bring some more stuff because I keep buying. Oh, you can get Podfather of Gaming underwear. That's my favorite. That hasn't arrived yet, but as soon as it arrives, I will show that off here.
No, please
don't. Will I model it?
No, please no.
I can show it instead of model. Anyway, so let's continue. Oh, by the way, how do you find it? Go over to the Podfather of Gaming Podfather of Gaming Facebook group, Podfather of Gaming group on Facebook. Look at the top. It'll be a featured post, and you can check out all the merchandise in the 2 links that are posted there. This week, starting tomorrow for me, and also for Corey as well, we're going to be at the Gathering of Friends. This is an annual. Alan Moon, he started it. He ran it for years. He's actually turned over running it to 2 longtime people and friends of his, Bobby and Craig. They will be running it, but Alan will be there. We'll all be there. It's not an industry thing, but certainly so many people from the industry there. So I get to see all of my old friends there. It's really great. But one of the coolest things that's going to happen there, besides seeing Corey, having dinner, having drinks, will be that my role-playing group, my D&D 5e role-playing group, which consists of Julie Ahern, Dustin Wessel, Rachel Blasky, and it's DM'd by Alex Schmidt. We are going to be together, and we have determined we're going to play in person since we've been playing for like 2 years online only. So this is pretty cool. We basically set aside almost an entire day for the 5, 6, 7 of us.
I have discovered that Alex is in fact bribable.
Yeah, if you want to show up as an NPC, you go.
No. I'm just gonna have him kill your character.
Oh, my character's died twice already. It's almost an ongoing joke. My character's kind of fearless and 6th level cleric at the moment, human cleric, but he just kind of does dumb things sometimes and runs into battle. He's pretty smart, but dumb. Anyway, gonna be great. The entire experience there. At the Gathering of Friends is very cool. I get to see Ignacy's going to be there. Corey's going to be there. We'll do a live episode. Maybe we'll even have special guests come by and say something. Maybe it'll be a different kind of episode than the usual. So we'll have a lot of stuff to talk about. We'll be telling you next time about the games we saw that we can talk about. We can't talk about all of them. Any prototypes, some of them are secret. Like you'll hear about the play testing about mine. I can't talk about it, but I can tell you how the playtesting is going. But a lot of companies show off their stuff that they're releasing at the end of the year, like Essen timeframe or Gen Con timeframe too. So that's going to be a lot. A lot of news should come out of the Gathering of Friends over the next 2 weeks. I'm going to give a quick shout out to Fort Circle Games, who's coming out with a game called Votes for Women. And it's a game about the suffrage movement. So Kevin Bertram and Jason Matthews of Twilight Struggle fame, he's the designer, co-designer of that. They're principals in the company. And this game is, of course, about the 19th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution in 1920. And the entire movement is covered there. A portion of the proceeds goes to the League of Women Voters, which is great. So if you want to check it out, you can go to www.votesforwomen.com, and you can check out the game. You can buy it and include shipping, and it'll come to you. So check that out.
It's a fantastic game, and
have you played or you've seen it?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh wow,
I get around.
You get around, my friend. So I just wanted to point that out. Kevin's a good guy. Jason's a great guy. I've known him for years. So just wanted to point that out. Let's get over to the event deck. So listen, if I haven't said it clearly enough, you got to nominate us for the best podcast in the 17th Annual Golden Geek Awards. And you're probably going to hear more about this as we go forward. Once we are nominated, hopefully, then I'm going to ask you to go and vote for us. But for now, go over to boardgamegeek.com/geek awards/boardgame, or just look at the front page and you'll find it. Please nominate us. That would be so much fun. You only have 4 days from when you hear this. I've already posted it in a couple of places. Please go do this. Ignacy cries. It's not fun to see this.
No.
So the first thing we have is kind of not such great news that E3 2023, which is the biggest show in generally in gaming, though this is e-gaming, has been canceled for this year. So then they were set to return, first time since 2019, but it's been called off. And the reason's been called off because big companies have just pulled out. And we don't 100% know the reason. Nintendo pulled out, Microsoft pulled out, and Ubisoft.
It's been going on for a while. E3's had a little bit of a roller coaster history. Traditionally, you'd go to E3 or you'd see it online to see the new releases, the new announcements, the press releases from the big companies. But for the past, I'd say 5 years, the companies have been releasing their new stuff themselves. You know, you can see Sony's press releases about the PlayStation just everywhere. So people have kind of foreseen the death of E3 for a while. And I think the big question is whether E3 will actually come back from this.
It is very interesting because you're not going to get a lot of people coming out there if you don't have the big companies, I think, right? It's going to be interesting to see what happens in the future. So the next one's interesting. I think you might have put this one up as well. Stonemaier Games takes IPs from the bankrupt Inside the Box games.
Yeah.
This was published on Dicebreaker. Go ahead.
Oh, I can go ahead and take this one.
Yeah.
So not Naylor, but Inside the Box was in a bit of a controversy a little while ago where their Kickstarter campaign was kind of hijacked by the employees, and they started posting that they were not being paid by Inside the Box. And it turned into obviously that's a pretty bad thing and a big accusation, but it uncovered a lot of badness going on inside. But just recently, the studio has declared that they are in insolvency. The company is gone, and they sold all of their assets, both IPs and existing inventory, over to Stonemaier Games. And there's a lot of mix and match there. So Subterra's around, but Subterra 2 is apparently very low on inventory. There's a couple Kickstarters that haven't delivered, and it's unclear whether the inventory is there. Stonemaier is actually asking for shipping again to be able to send some of these. So there's a lot of news about it. I would check out both on Dicebreaker and on BGG just to make sure if you are involved in Alba, Subterra 2, if you are interested in the older games, check it out and see what's available.
Yeah, I don't know Naylor Games at all. Their big game is Magnate, the First City. So it's
It's
interesting that
actually
they
Magnate made a pretty big splash. It's a really cool navigate the real estate bubble, buy property, build houses, sell houses game. It's a good game, but it's a recent one, and they are a pretty new player.
very, very interesting. Now, here's one that's very interesting to me. Again, this is a very businessy and legal, and I'm into this kind of stuff. So the an Italian museum has sued to stop production of a Vitruvian Man puzzle. Now, does everybody know? I'll mention the Vitruvian Man is the Leonardo da Vinci piece that shows a man with his arms stretched out uh, perpendicular to the ground and then at an angle to the ground. It shows both, and it shows kind of that,
It's
we as
basically
humans,
dancing YMCA.
it's it's like humans are both square and round. It kind of shows. It's a very interesting piece by Leonardo da Vinci. Italian court is blocked the puzzle company from producing and selling the product, and the museum is suing them. And by the way, suing Ravensburger, so the biggest company in Germany that does games and puzzles. We call them the Hasbro of Germany. Now, forget the details of this, but of like what the court is saying. They're just saying that, well, Italy owns this IP, or maybe the museum owns this IP, being the image. That is absurd. I mean, it's literally an absurdity upon absurdities. This is a 500-year-old image that has been used in 1 million places, including
Insanely popular.
I mean, everybody has seen this image. If you don't know it, you can type Vitruvian Man, and you will see what it looks like. You say, "Oh, of course, that it's a line image by him." It's ridiculous to think that anybody now owns this. They might own the original, of course, but IPs don't last for 500 years. They usually last for like 50 years, and then they go into public domain, and that's a whole nother topic to cover. But
yeah, they're actually suing for 1,500 euros a day.
Yeah,
since November 2022. It's a ridiculous amount of money they're suing.
There's zero chance. So probably what is going to happen. I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say what's going to happen is that Ravensburger will simply say, "Fine, we're just not selling in Italy. You want to come after us? You take it into German court, and then we'll answer this, because we are not paying you for this because we don't believe that what you're doing is right." So,
and this has been done before. There was a French fashion company that used the birth of Venus, the naked woman inside the clamshell, and Italy
yes.
sued them for using the image. So
Wow,
that was last year.
that's
Or
that's
21. I'm sorry, it was 2021.
that is wild. So, news over at Steve Jackson Games, they've got a new CEO. Their previous CEO, Phil Reed, is stepping back. The CEO is Meredith Placco, and she has been appointed as the chief executive officer at Steve Jackson Games. As longtime Steve Jackson executive Phil Reed steps back from his current role, the company announced. Placco comes to Steve Jackson from paint company TurboDork, where she was also CEO. Reed, who became COO of Steve Jackson Games in 2008 and moved up to CEO in 2014, is cutting his time commitment to focus on health, personal work while still being available for the transition. He will also act as art director, continue to lead crowdfunding, and serve as a member of the company's senior staff and board of directors. Reed joined the inaugural Community Advisory Council for Kickstarter last year. So I do not know Meredith. Go ahead.
It also sounds like Meredith is staying on with TurboDork. So it sounds like she's going to be working both.
That's not a common thing to have a CEO job in two places. That's for sure. And maybe she can do that. That'd be great. I do not know Meredith because she's coming from essentially outside the industry, from a paint company that's tangential, right, to the industry. A TurboDork must be a paint company that supplies paints for miniatures. But I know Phil very well. He is a very awesome nerd. He's just a good guy. He just exudes us. That's kind of the way I think. hardworking guy, personable guy. So I wish him the best luck in changing his role, kind of like going to hopefully a more relaxed role within the company, and wish Meredith the best of luck in becoming a CEO of a very important, large, big selling company. Obviously, Steve Jackson Games' biggest seller is the Munchkin line. And while that might not be a game that I go to, or Corey goes to, or you guys go to very often, it still has had a huge impact in the general world of hobby gaming and mass market gaming.
Oh, absolutely. So many people entered gaming because of Munchkin. And what I like a lot about Steve Jackson Games is they're one of the few companies with a lot of transparency. They will give a regular report of the numbers and money that they've made in the year. And if you look at their top 20 sellers, it's always 19 out of 20 of them are Munchkin.
Right. And speaking of a company with huge amounts of transparency, you see how I did that, man? That was a great segue right there.
Huge.
Huge, and I'm a professional podcaster.
You are so
Stonemaier
good.
Games.
You should win an award like the BGG Golden Geek. I mean, this is Pulitzer material.
I love you, man.
Stonemaier Games.
Stonemaier Games, who is also extremely transparent. They actually publish their sales every year, their profitability. Jamie Stegmaier, who is the president of Stonemaier, does all of this stuff to talk about games. They have reported that their sales declined in 2022. Wingspan was off dramatically. Stonemaier Games sales declined in 2022 with sharply reduced sales of the Wingspan core game, an important factor, according to the company's annual report to stakeholders from founder Jamie Stegmaier. Stonemaier Games sales were $20.7 million in 2022, down 16% from $24.7 million in 2021, but substantially up from the company's $17.9 million sales in 2019. So I got a little extra inside information because Alex Schmidt, my DM in my D&D game, I reached out to him. I said, you want to make any comments for the record, off the record? You know what he wants? So he gave me off and he gave me on record. He said, basically, 2021 was one of those years that was an absolute watershed moment because of the way that geeks were just buying games like crazy. Yeah. The fact that the way that things were hitting and restocks were hitting, especially the restock that happened to come at the end of the year, it became a huge number.
We saw that with the conventions. The conventions had lower attendance and tremendously higher sales. Right. 21 was a weird year.
It was a weird year. So, and 2022 being down was only because of some out of stock situations and the containers hitting too late to refill, to backfill the stock, especially for Wingspan. Wingspan, by the way, not only is their biggest selling game, but I believe at this moment, Wingspan is the #1 board game in the industry, and that beats Catan and Ticket to Ride. I don't have empirical evidence for that, but I have anecdotal evidence for that. It is that big right now, Wingspan. So I don't think Stonemaier is at all in trouble, but since they are very transparent, we like talking about numbers. They have had a declining sales, but I bet 2023 they're going to crush it once again.
Me too.
So you put this one up here, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah,
right?
let me go ahead and take this one. So one of the classic games out there is Through the Desert. Through the Desert is a Reiner Knizia design from originally 1998. So we're talking an older game, and it's passed through a lot of different companies. It was at Fantasy Flight, it was at Z-Man, it passed around, and then it kind of faded out. Over the past, I'd say 2 years, there were a lot of rumors about where this title was ending up for another reprint, probably new edition with new art. And it ended up in the hands of Steeped Games, which is the company that does Chai. Fantastic company. They do great components. Everyone was really excited. They were even advertising it at conventions, showing off box covers. Just recently, I'm going to say in the past week or two, it became clear that that Steeped Games had lost through the desert, and now it's been announced that it's going to be redone by All Play, the company that used to be BoardGameTables.com. All Play has really gone crazy. I think as a company, they are putting out all sorts of tremendously good games. They have their small box games they're putting out through Kickstarters. And this is just another big move from them. So they've said new art, a redo. It's going to be a big addition. Knowing All Play, it's probably going to be through a crowdfunding platform, probably Kickstarter. But it's been confirmed from Joe Wiggins, the head of All Play, that they now have the rights. And it's coming. You're going to hear more about it soon.
You said this is coming from All Play, even though it says Steeped Games. I'm sorry, I missed the connection.
That was the whole story. No, Steeped.
They got Steeped, got rid of the could not do have the
I
IP
think it
any longer.
timed out. Steeped had the rights to do it, and nothing happened, so I think it timed out.
So all of a sudden, All Play picked it up. It just doesn't say that right in the beginning of the
well, this
is
link. Literally days old news, so it's probably not going to be on the big forums yet. Yeah. But there is a thread on BGG talking about, it's actually from Joe Wiggin himself talking about how they now have the rights to do the publishing.
Very cool. And All Play, I agree with you, is doing some amazing things there, and has reinvented themselves a couple of times, in fact. Quartermaster Logistics is launching Quartermaster Direct with former Fun Again distribution leadership team. So this comes from ICV2, and it actually was a sponsored link there. But this is important enough, I think, that we talk about it. So Quartermaster Logistics, of course, is one of the longest running Kickstarter fulfillment companies, and they're a arm of, you could say, of Cool Stuff Incorporated. And Cool Stuff has gone way down in the amount of direct sales to consumers that it does on board games and other products, but their Quartermaster Logistics has gone up and up and up. They are bringing over some of the team from the now defunct Fun Again Logistics. So because these guys are very good, and Fun Again just doesn't want to do it any longer. That's just that they've gone out of business on this. And I think that Quartermaster is going to become the preeminent place now to do all of your logistics.
Yeah, I think it's a big move here. Quartermaster's been the big player for a long time, and it just makes sense that they're going to go ahead and kind of clean up some of the pieces after Fun Again fell apart. And I'm waiting to see what Quartermaster Direct is going to do that's different from Quartermaster Logistics proper. There's a lot of mention of global sales and distribution, and with the direct title right in there, it might be more direct distribution than what Quartermaster Logistics is doing. So it's, again, just Quartermaster putting their fingers in every aspect of logistics and distribution.
Exactly. Yeah, the direct name seems to indicate direct to consumer more. So it should be interesting to see what this is going to mean over the long term. Yeah. And finally, we have Paizo releasing the first draft of their new OGL. Boy, we're going to see how many times OGL is going to be mentioned on this podcast by the end of the next year. So Pathfinder Studio releases the first draft of that OGL. And Corey, did you glean any information about what they're doing with this?
Not really. I read through it, and it sounds like they're reacting strongly to the big OGL, blow up that we talked about before. And if you remember, in that previous thing, Dungeons and Dragons had leaked, or someone had leaked the OGL from Dungeons and Dragons, and the community got really upset about it. And in response, Paizo, who's obviously the biggest user of this open gaming license, had said, "We've had enough, we're making our own." This is the follow-up. And reading through it, it's basically just saying, we're not doing this that D&D threatened, and we're not doing this that D&D threatened.
Right.
So there's probably going to be more details as it goes along.
They're calling their OGL the ORC, for Open RPG Creative License, which I think is very cute and creative.
Lovely.
Right. And the quote from the company and in their FAQ states that the whole point of the ORC is to give the gaming community comfort confidence, and certainty. I like that, the three C's. It gives our community a license that is not reliant on any one company. That's a direct hit at Wizards of the Coast.
Yes.
This is how we create what the open source community refers to a virtuous cycle, evolving our games to be the best they can. So they're really taking a strong set of a strong set of morals almost to say we want to engage with the community and all other creators. So you can use this license and we back this license. So if anybody publishes something, right, and that states that they're on the orc, you can't get sued by it. You can't, right? I publish something, I go by the orc rules. If Hasbro, WotC says, oh, I don't like what you're doing, they got to go out after Paizo. And good luck on that. They've got deep pockets, very deep pockets as well. They are a tremendous company.
It also isn't limited to just RPGs. There's little extensions for the orc that can be board game, card game, war game, digital video game. They're trying to cover all their bases. Also, should say that it is available for download and you can read it on Paizo's website. And it comes across pretty legalese, but it's freely available.
Very cool. Well, we got through all the news. So I think we got to get over to strategy and tactics. So I'm going to pick here something that doesn't have an Ignacy name in it. So let's go over to Mario. Let's go over to Martin Leduska, who's at Lebby. I don't remember Martin ever giving us one. So thank you, Martin. As a new listener, I'm curious how this arch nemesis thing between Tom and Steven started. Well, I wrote all about it actually in Ignacy's book, which I have behind me. Cool. One of my many things called Games That Tell Stories. And he invited all of these designers to write an article for his book. And he knew me, so he just invited me. I wasn't a designer certainly at the time, but no, he goes, and well, Bonacore knows a lot of designers. But we wrote about stories of the game industry in general. And in brief, if you don't have the book, or if you don't want to go read the book, the thing was that I was just an avid listener and stuff like that. And Tom and I simply fell in love with each other. And then decided, this is going to be a fun thing to do. And we started teasing each other, and he started inviting me onto podcasts and onto his shows and stuff like that. And I was sponsoring the Dice Tower show at Gen Con. So we just became fun to tease the crap out of each other. There's not the big thing, but the story that I have in the book is all about all of the different things, the different touch points that I've had over the years up until that was published, like in 2015.
It's been about 10 years now, hasn't it?
Since
all this started with Tom.
Oh, much longer. It's probably 2011. It was very, very short after Stronghold started. So 12 years. Yeah, very shortly after Stronghold started.
And I remember the big contests that you had that were pie in the face contests. Those went year after year after
year. The pie in the face contests were great. I'm not 2-1.
No, I seem to recall that you won every single one.
That's right. I've never lost to a pie in the face.
Never lost. That's right. That's what I thought.
Thank you. Daniel Lejungbird is at Jungberg.
I think so.
Da Red H89. He asks, what do you think is the best way to extend our community and make more people discover the wonders of board gaming? Is it via mass market media like movies, TV series, and talk shows? Or is it through physical events? For example, at schools and at youth centers, maybe celebrities talking about board games is the most key. What do you think? And he's got a little side story here. I have some friends in my soccer team that have heard me talking about board games for years. Now they are starting playing Catan. I can't wait to show them more complex games. It really gives me joy to see other people discovering the magic about fantastic hobby. Therefore, the question, sorry for the long post. So, Corey, in your humble opinion, what's the best way of just bringing more people, into the hobby in general? What do you think?
Honestly, I think the most powerful thing is word of mouth. If you just talk with friends and you talk about it, everybody talks, and then you have a friend over and you play a game. But there's a second step there that's important. Let's say you bring people over and you play games and they think it's a pretty cool environment and a pretty cool idea. They're going to start looking out in the world for what's available for board games. And let's say I had some time and some resources. What I would do is start a multimedia company to make YouTube videos extolling the virtues of board games. And yes, celebrities are a great idea. I would do that too.
Do
But we've
you
got such an amazing community on YouTube through podcasting. The basis, the foundation of it, though, is just people talking to people. That's the essence of our industry, is people getting together over a shared love of just playing a game. It's our social lubricant.
It really is, and I think that's why Daniel actually answered his own question when he said he gets such a joy out of showing this to other people, and it is the best way. Just find games that people will enjoy with you. Here's another piece of anecdotal stuff from me. So I talked about I went away with my oldest friends in the world a couple of weeks back, hanging out in the wilderness of Pennsylvania, literally up in the mountains there. I cannot bring anything there that requires 10 brain cells to teach. It's between the amount of drinking that happens and they like games, but they'd much rather eat, drink, and play music. We all play together too, than do anything with any amount of rules. So we play the simplest. So I literally brought a bunch. I bought a bunch of simple games, and one of the ones I brought, little plug over to Stronghold and 2F Spiele, I brought some of the fast forward games.
Yeah.
Now, if you guys remember that and me talking about it back in the day, fast forward games have no rules when you start. You lay a deck of cards on the table. One side that says, if you're reading this, you've got the wrong side of the deck up. Turn it over. You turn it over. It says, when you get the players together, turn over this first card. Select the player to start, turn over the first card. And the game teaches you how to play it as you play the game. It's just genius. Play games like that with people. They'll get interested in the concept of a game as a social aspect of their lives, and they will be more interested in it over time.
Absolutely. And the fast forward games, I loved that trend when Freedom and Freeze had that series of games come out, and it peaked, and there were several bigger board games that sold themselves as you don't need to know any rules. It kind of waned a little bit, but I think it's coming back. I mean, the Spiel nominee Adventures of Robin Hood almost has that. There's almost no rules. It just starts you going. And they
Abs-
add things as you go. I love that. And that's following along the video game industry where that's a norm now. I remember back in the 70s and 80s, video games came with instruction books and you had to read them.
that's
That's unheard of now.
That's exactly right. I was also going to point out the Adventures of Robin Hood is exactly that. It just teaches you how to play the game as you play it. And it's a wonderful thing. And it's so easy to
Yeah.
get people into it. Story-based game. There's another one, to his lesser extent, the Lord of the Rings adventure game, which just came out.
Yeah.
A little bit of
Those are
that as
great.
well.
Even Jaws of the Lion. Jaws of the Lion is essentially a tutorial for Gloomhaven, and they do it so well. We
Very
need
good.
more of that. We need more of that.
We do. We need more of that. I think we're going to cut this one, and this next question is really cool, but maybe Ignacy should be here for this one as well. So we'll and guess what? It's from Vitruvian Gamer. We were talking about Vitruvian, man. And Kurt is a good guy. He's a big fan of the podcast, and he works for Ignacy over during the spiel and stuff like that. But Kurt, we'll get to your question next week. In the meantime, let's get over to playtesting. So last week, Ignacy gave us the question, and that question was, what's your take on the brand new Portal Games title, Thorgal? Don't care at all, curious, insta-buy. What will you do? Watch a video, read the rulebook? What is your plan for the crowdfunding campaign run by your beloved podcaster and publisher? So, Corey, we've got a decent number of responses here. Anything there stick out in your mind? I see something immediately, but if you have one.
Eric Lagnebeck had one that just jumped out at me. It's I've been out of the comics for a bit, but today, as I'm writing this, the Major Spoilers podcast reviewed the first volume, and I'm going back to refresh my memory and fill in the gaps. So basically, he's an instaback, it sounds like, and it just brings up, the bigger history behind the this new project that I, for one, was unaware of until everybody started talking about it. So I'm excited about that.
Very, very good. I sadly, Gavin Kenny says, sorry, Ignacy, it's a co-op, and I'm just gonna have to give it a pass, I'm afraid. So that obviously, so he did do the research, right? So he looked at the game, he heard Ignacy talking about it probably, he looked at the game, he said, co-ops, he's just not a co-op guy. So that's cool. Nothing wrong with that. Anything else from you? I'll give
uh,
you. Go ahead if
yeah,
you
you
want.
could go for it.
Yeah, so Valentine Cretin says, I'm very curious about the absence of the main languages of the country Thorgal and most of its readers are from. So, in other words, I assume he's asking, like, well, why aren't, because Thorgal is about Vikings, right? Right?
Yeah,
Right. And so I'm assuming he's
it's
saying there's no Nordic languages that it's coming out in. Everyone's got to remember that a game doesn't come out in other languages other than the native language of the country, in this case.
well, Thorgal itself. I think it's a little Conan-esque, and they're kind of downplaying any sort of nationality or historical thing. It's a more fantasy thing going on.
Okay.
So
The premise here is why is it getting into other languages? And I think that the answer is a business answer. Portal Games is always going to release in Polish and
yeah.
English, and then after that, it's got to get picked up, right, by a publisher who wants to do the hard work of marketing it in another language. So, Valentine, that's the answer, and it's just a business reason. I would not worry about it,
Yeah,
long
and the
term.
designers, of course, are a Polish team.
There you go. Um, hey, we got Sean Flory here.
Ah,
I'll
Sean
read it.
is
Good friend of yours and
my
mine.
my co-writer for Dice Tower Now podcast.
Right. And he says, I'm not familiar with the Thorgal comics that the game is based on. Because of that, I'm going to pass on purchasing it. Hopefully, I'll get to play it at a convention, and maybe that will change my mind should it come to retail or a second Kickstarter campaign. So that's really good.
Yeah.
And that's just it. That's a thing, right? So the theme didn't strike him. We're going to talk about theme in a moment, but he wants to check it out. Beforehand, I'll give one more. Gabriel Perez. I'm curious and interested. I'm curious about Portal Games' idea of dungeon crawling and campaign games. So a whole mix, and that makes sense that there'd be a mix of people's opinions on this. So excellent, everybody.
Yeah,
I
personally, I am so excited about Portal, who is so good at story-driven things anyway, doing a more campaign-driven epic dungeon crawl kind of game. So I've got my eye on it pretty close. Just that's my own answer to the question.
That's very good. So this week, it's a question for me. I haven't asked the question in a while because we now have three hosts. They're always asking. So
And we don't listen to you anyway.
who listens to me?
Nobody.
So my question to the audience is, the most common question asked of a game designer is this: do you start with a theme and then work at the game mechanics, or do you start with mechanics and then work at adding a theme? Every game designer gets that question. So I'm going to ask the audience, are you first attracted to the theme of a game, or are you first attracted to the mechanics of a game? Corey, when you see a box, right? You're an average gamer.
I am not an average gamer.
Very sub average, in my opinion. So,
Thank you. Thank you.
are you first attracted to the theme of the game, or do you immediately want to know, well, what's the mechanics?
Honestly, I don't think I have a normal answer to this. I think I'm going to be the outlier. I tend to be attracted to the company and the designer, which then will often lead me to the mechanics. And I'll play any game. I'm an Omni gamer. I'm not a Euro guy or an Ameritrash guy or a dungeon crawl guy or anything like that. But theme is pretty low on the list. I have
Wow.
fun playing a game regardless of theme. Often the theme will enhance things, and I get kind of excited if I play a very mechanical game, but those mechanics tie into a theme. But in general, theme is not my top thing in playing a game. It's going to be word of mouth, designer, company, then mechanics. Theme's low.
That's interesting. So mine is almost. I get you
You're kind of the
100%.
opposite from what I've seen. Yeah,
Well, right, but you're giving neither sort of. You're giving it's not theme, it's not mechanic. You're saying it's word of mouth. It's the designer, it's the company, and certainly that is part of it. But me, I'm all about the theme. I'm gonna look at every quickly at least like, oh, there's a new Lord of the Rings game out. Let me look at that thing, and I'm gonna bring it over and I'm gonna see what. Then I'm gonna look at, well, what's this game about? What are the mechanics here? Obviously, I know about the theme, but how did they implement the theme? So I'm all about the
sure.
theme. New dungeon crawler comes out. I like dungeon crawlers. I like fantasy. Good. I'm gonna now investigate it. Sci-fi things I like. If I see a game, that has some like, it's a name of a city, random city in across the world. Really not even gonna pick that game up unless somebody says you gotta play this mechanically different, this, that, and I think you're going to like it. Oh, then I'll play it, of course. But it does not hook me in when I see the name, and I'm just picking a name, Rome on the front of a box. Don't
I think there's been one
care.
or two of those.
Yeah, don't care. You know what I mean? Sure.
Yeah,
If you said to me, I want to teach you this game, I think you'll like it. I'm in. I'm an Omni gamer
but
too.
if you see a game that is heavily invested in Dune or Lord of the Rings or some big IP, Star Wars, you're
Yeah,
gonna be more or less excited based on the IP.
or generic sci-fi and generic fantasy and just other things that space exploration, of course, I love and stuff like that. So all that kind of stuff, that's my wheelhouse. So
Sure.
everybody out there, I've already posted this question in the Guild on Board Game Geek.
Oh,
So
you're so
please,
good.
I'm trying, and I know you don't know how to do it.
You
So
deserve an
please,
award, like a Golden Geek or something for this. I mean, your effort and expertise, your professionalism is unparalleled.
unparalleled, annoying person that you are. Yes.
I am.
Please go to the Guild on Board Game Geek and find our playtesting thread for this question and post your answer to it. In the meantime, let's go to final scoring. Thank you so much for listening. Help us spread the word about this podcast by telling your friends to download Board Games Insider wherever they like to get their podcasts. Or you can now watch Board Games Insider on the Podfather of Gaming YouTube channel. Did you want to be part of this podcast? You can. Just ask us questions for our strategy and tactics segment, or answer our question to you for our playtesting segment by going over to our Guild on Board Game Geek and finding the thread where those should be posted. Our websites, check them out, portalgamesus.com, podfathergaming.com, and dicetowerdish.com. We're all over social media, so interact with us, please. On Facebook, please like our pages, which is /BoardGamesInsider, /PortalGamesUS, and /PodfatherGaming. You can speak directly to Ignacy, Corey, and Steven on Instagram and Twitter, which is @PortalGamesUS, @PodfatherGaming, @DicetowerDish, and @DicetowerNow. And the active YouTube channels are Portal Games Movies, Portal Games Gameplays, and the Podfather of Gaming. On TikTok, for Ignacy, it's Portal Games US. Hopefully, we'll see you this year, 2023, at an upcoming convention. If you go, please come over, talk to us, let's chat. We live to meet all of you. The Board Games Insider was professionally edited by Joshua Bowman from Tabletop Submarine. If you want him to edit your podcast, please reach out to him at tabletopsubmarine@gmail.com. And that great voice you hear doing our intro, outro, and in-between segments is that of Ray Greenlee. He can be contacted to do voiceover work at raygreenleevoiceover.com. Hey, Corey, that brings us to the end of the segment. I see you have something goofy to say. What do you got?
I just like that I can edit things into the script and you'll just read whatever I put
You
in
could
there. It's
almost
kind
say
of fun.
anything there. It could be very
Almost
scary.
anything. I just I thought this was kind of funny. So over last week, like I said, I was down in the LA studios and we had a lot of meetings and we're talking with a lot of companies. And I had a meeting with Dan Klitzner, who you may not know by name, but he is the inventor of the Bop It.
Bop it.
That toy that you bop it, you twist it, you slap it, you pass it. And This is a fascinating guy. He was so fun to talk to. Was talking a little bit about the history of this toy, and it is really everywhere. You talk to almost anybody, and they've heard of it, they've played with it, and we just had a wonderful chat about where Bop It came from, where Bop It is going. I thought it was just really a neat thing. So I am a fan. And by the way, Bop It is technically a game, maybe not a board game, but it's technically a game. It's under the Hasbro umbrella, and it's celebrating its 25th anniversary.
And
So,
I've never heard of Bop It, I don't believe.
it's because you're old, man.
Because I'm old, I should have heard of it, I think. I don't know, maybe not. Anyway, that was very cool. It's great meeting some of these people tangential to what, the hobby. They have
Oh, I love it.
games and they're in the mass and you can check them out. So very cool and very goofy, very cool. Everybody, take care. Thank you for listening. We'll see you next week.
Have a good one, everyone.